Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. I've already spoken about Hadrian's Wall a few times on this channel, not only because it's very interesting for someone who studies ancient Roman military history, but also because of some websites, videos, articles that made incredibly stupid statements about said wall and the emperor to build it as a representation of the fact that probably these people have never opened a book in their entire life. With that being said, I found a video which is from 6 months ago and somehow it missed my radar from History Hit called What Was Life Actually Like for Romans Stationed on Hadrian's Wall with Dan Snow. And I'm really interested to see because, as you know, I always say this, but History Hit, sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss. It really depends on who the presenter is and most importantly who wrote the script. So, let's check it out. I hope this is gonna be good.
It's one of the most famous historic sites in England.
Yes.
Hadrian's Wall.
Wow.
Over 80 miles of wall, turrets and forts, stretching from coast to coast across northern England.
Man, I would love to go to northern England and actually do some footage filming myself. That's one thing I do appreciate of these episodes, when they actually go to the place. And it seems like they brought a drone. Pretty cool. I used a drone a couple of times on my videos.
Mile after mile of stone marching over the horizon.
Yeah.
An icon of Roman dominance.
100%. 100%.
And now it's celebrating its birthday. In 122 AD, the Emperor Hadrian visited Britain. And as a Roman historian tells us, he put many things right. And he was the first to build a wall from sea to sea to separate the Romans from the barbarians.
Yeah.
But Hadrian's
And what barbarians the ones living in Caledonia, modern day Scotland, were. Goodness gracious.
wall is also an enigma. To understand this familiar but surprising structure, I'm going to explore three key sites along its length. Arbea on Tyneside in the east, Chester's in the heart of Northumbria, and Birdoswald in Cumbria as the wall approaches the west.
Nice.
I'll dig into some of the main questions about this 1,900-year-old structure. Why was the wall built? Barbarian land. Who were the people who lived here?
For women.
This is aggressive defense.
What happened when...
Oh no, they got Simon Elliott. Damn it. This is gonna get bad soon. So up to this point I really liked it, but...
Roman rule in Britain came to an end. Did this wall come tumbling down? And don't worry, I'll also be seeking out the influence of Hadrian's Wall in modern times, from the Eagle of the Ninth to Game of Thrones.
Okay. Cool. I like the title, The Wall, Rome's Great Northern Frontier. It's a really, really cool title.
When the Emperor Hadrian came to his province of Britannia in AD 122, there was a profound change happening to the empire. Up until then, in the 150 years since Augustus, the first emperor, the Roman Empire had no real borders. It had just grown and grown, with no apparent limit.
Yeah.
But now the empire was increasingly coming up against obstacles. Powerful rival empires in the east, resurgent Germanic tribes beyond the Rhine, and tough, warlike people in what is now Scotland. They had to ask themselves the question, did they want to go on expanding indefinitely? And the answer for Emperor Hadrian was no. He wanted to consolidate, dig in, fortify a line around that empire. And that is why this is the northern edge of an empire in its prime.
You might need some sunscreen, mate. Anyways, one thing I wanted to say, even though it's true that the Caledones, the people, all the different tribes in Scotland were very warlike, as he's saying, it's important to contextualize this correctly. This isn't a wall built because the Romans were afraid of the Caledonians. No, sir. This is a wall built because there was no reason for the Romans economically to invade Caledonia and control it militarily by force. Because you have to look at it this way. Whenever you have a campaign, and do remember the campaigns happen during spring and summer, they don't happen during winter. So whenever you organize a military campaign, what you're doing in the simplest of forms is that you are investing capital in the form of soldiers, payment, moving on legions, raising new legions, all of the different logistical needs when it comes to moving your legions to invade enemy territory and occupy. All of this is a massive cost. So, in order to justify the cost, you have to first scout, assess the land, evaluate the possible properties and loot that you can get, and assess the level of resistance. If the resistance is too high in comparison to how much you've got to gain, the Romans don't invade. If the resistance is low and the riches are high, the Romans invade without even blinking. If the resistance is very high, but so is the riches and monetary gain that you can get from it, then it's a situation where generals, senate, emperors sit down, talk, and discuss other aspects, such as, for example, the strategic importance and value of said territory that they're going to gain. For example, Sicily is an excellent example of this. When it comes to Scotland, it was high in resistance, low in possible monetary gains. So they build a wall and they don't invade. Just to give, because I don't want this to sound like, oh, the Romans were afraid, these people were too strong, build a wall and hide. No, that's why they don't expand.
One that stretched from here across thousands of miles of Roman-controlled land and sea to the sands of the North African desert.
Yep.
I'm starting my investigation of Rome's northern wall at Burd Oswald, a well-preserved fort built 1900 years ago in Cumbria. Joining me by one of the main entrances is Rob Collins from Newcastle University.
Nice.
So this is obviously one of the big gates here.
Yeah, this is the east gate at Burd Oswald, and one of the best gates along the entire wall, really.
It's huge, isn't it? It's a double. I thought these were meant to be defensive positions. These massive big gates.
Yeah, this is a gate, but it's also a monument. You have to imagine this thing standing 2 or 3 stories tall. And you can see the quality of building in these gates. So those stones there that make the pier for the arch are very nicely shaped. You've got this little Springer stone, and actually the first voussoir, the first bent stone, which formed the arch over the whole gate.
Is this the idea? You're kind of entering or leaving the Roman Empire and they want you to know about it?
Well, in some cases, but actually it's not just the empire, it's a fort. You know, this is a large settlement full of 500 soldiers. You know you're coming into military space when you walk through a gate like this.
Yeah, and also the fact that it's large, it doesn't make it any less defensible, because you would have had all the soldier stations here and this would have been one of these few points of entry. So yeah, people can try and attack this. It will be the most fortified area.
So we've got 500 men here, and this is one of how many castles on the wall?
There are 17 to 20 forts along the wall, those fortified garrisons. Yeah, a castle in a medieval sense.
A little different from a castle, but
Burd Oswald follows the classic fort design of Hadrian's Wall. It has curved corners, giving it a playing card shape. There's large gateways on the east, west and south sides. And its northern edge runs along the line of the wall. There would have been a fortified gate here, giving access to the lands beyond the wall. According to Roman sources, there was unrest in northern Britannia in the early 2nd century AD. It's possible the wall was built, in part, to demarcate hostile tribal groups from those who were allied to Rome, like the Brigantes, who appear to have been the largest group in that region of Britain.
With Hadrian's Wall, you get something new. You're getting monumentality, and in stone. So all of a sudden, local people are encountering very large, very solid fortifications.
Absolutely, because Celtic people were mostly building in wood. The idea of bringing stone, there are exceptions of course, but the idea of monumental building in stone is absolutely Roman, and a massive visible difference when it comes to territories that you can tell, oh, the Romans did this, oh, the Romans have been here. You would be able to spot it immediately.
And if that isn't the worst bit, they've then got this massive entire wall that's cut the island in half. They can no longer just simply move their flocks from field to field if they're living locally. It's presenting a whole new way of life.
Right.
How many men would have manned this as a defensive belt right across this part of England? How many would there have been?
It's tough to be certain about numbers at any given time. Strength reports can sometimes lie, but you're looking at really a minimum of 12,000 men.
It's a big deal.
It's an army in and of itself, just based on this line on the wall.
Yeah,
In fact, several legions.
that's one army in one small corner of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about those 500 men who would have been here?
Well, what's great about this fort and most of Hadrian's Wall, in fact, is we have hundreds of inscriptions that often name the units that are in occupation. And here at Brodoswald, the most famous unit, the one that was here the longest, is a unit of Dacians. So Dacia is part of the Roman Empire, which is now modern-day Romania.
By the way, I conquered Dacia in my playthrough of my gaming channel Metatron's Protectorate, as I've been playing Centurion Defender of Rome. Already 4 episodes are out. There will be a total of 10. For example, this is me getting ready to invade Sicily with my legions, and that's moving my forces over here. And these guys reinforce here in case these 2 cohorts run away. And then we won't be able to give orders to a lot of troops because of the distance. Yeah, it's a really fun playthrough. You should check it out. Link in the description below. Look at this battle.
Wow.
So the Romans were really good about redistributing the manpower, I think we could say, of potentially, the most dangerous element of a population, those young men who have lots of energy and spirit and maybe not so much sense, putting them in the Roman army, shifting them to a different part of the Roman Empire where they can do the job of the empire and not endanger the empire.
Yeah. Very well put. Love these shots.
Hadrian's Wall didn't begin as a huge stone structure. Initially, in this part of the wall, it actually began as a turf wall. You can see the remains of it here, a big mound of turf and soil. And it was only perhaps when Hadrian came to visit himself that the plan changed. The turf wall was turfed out, and a massive stone wall was built just over there, 50 meters to the north.
It's also possible that rather than actually changing a previous plan, that was just a momentary solution. It's possible that the original plan was indeed always to build a stone. It's difficult to know, though.
The legionaries who built the wall often left marks that didn't have an obvious military purpose. Rob, why is there a huge penis on the wall?
Well, it's a fantastic bit of what some people would call graffiti, but I think it might be better to see this as a magic symbol, as a symbol of protection. The Romans actually put these things all over their empire. So anywhere you travel in the Roman Empire, I would challenge you, you should probably see a phallic symbol someplace where the Romans were building.
But this is not just graffiti carved out of the wall, this is a relief. This is a stonemason has been to work on this.
Yeah, this has taken a bit of time for probably a legionary soldier to carve out of the stone. And actually, if you think of it then as a protective symbol, because that's what a phallus is often meant to do. It's meant to protect a wearer if you have it as an amulet. If it's carved on your house, it's supposed to protect your home. Here we have it carved into the wall. They're putting some magic protection into the wall. And it kind of changes things a little bit when you think it's not just a massive physical barrier, but actually maybe they're trying to imbue it with a bit of magic too.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of massive physical barrier, it's now, 2 meters tall here. How high do we think it would have been?
We think it's about 4 meters tall at its full height.
So it's double.
How tall is Dan Snow? I'm getting confused. How tall is he?
This.
Yeah, double this. So you have to really consider this as a barrier. And it's not just a wall. So anyone trying to cross the wall, they've got to go across a massive ditch. They then have to climb the wall. They then have to get a little bit further afield. And then they've got to go over a mound, down a ditch, and up another mound called the vallum. And so there's 3 major obstacles there for crossing the wall.
Which would make it really difficult to do for an organized army. Imagine if they have cavalry, chariots, whatever, that would make it extremely difficult to do. But even for infantry, this would be difficult to do in an organized manner. And it also gives you time to reorganize, slows them down, you can shoot them down. There is a lot that you can do. If it's a single person, like a farmer, and they just try to sneak through, well, again, they won't be able to do it easily, but they might still do it. But that doesn't matter, because this is here to block actual enemy corps.
You think of Roman legions not fearing anybody or anything, and yet to invest that much time and effort in creating this huge defensive belt, something they didn't like up here.
Yeah, it's a massive investment of manpower to build this thing, and not just for 1 or 2 miles. It's 80 Roman miles long, a bit more than 72 modern statute miles. So it's not a quick decision or a cheap build.
Of course.
The area around Birdoswald is the best place to see a continuous section of Hadrian's Wall, as the Romans planned it around 122 AD, with its large forts and smaller mile castles. Rob and I are heading a couple of Roman miles along the wall to Mile Castle 48, positioned above the steep-sided Poltros Burn, a railway embankment built by the Victorians now follows the line of the wall. Coming in now through the south gate, heading north through the wall. Is it me or is this fort built on the skew a little bit?
It is a little bit wonky. And it was for the Romans too. You can look at the stones there on both outside walls.
Yeah.
And you can see they're at an angle. So the Romans built to the slope.
Right, so it hasn't just subsided.
There's no subsidence. This is exactly how the Romans built it.
Why would they have built on a forward-facing slope like this, not on the higher ground up there?
So it looks a bit odd now. We've got a train line in front of us, the woods blocking the view. But actually, if you think about where we are, we're right beside this really narrow defile, this burn, the Poltros Burn. And actually, it's positioned very well to watch people going up and down that burn. In terms of people who might sneak in, people who might sneak out. So while it looks silly to a modern viewer, if you think in terms of how people moved in antiquity, people who might not want to be caught, actually, this is a really good position.
And out there, where the railway embankment is now built on Hadrian's Wall, through those trees, that is the barbarians.
That is Barbaricum, the land of the barbarians, where the empire ends and barbarianism begins.
And what signifies a barbarian? Is it their culinary taste, the way they dress?
That comes into it, but it's actually quite simple. For the Romans, a barbarian is anyone who isn't Roman.
Or Greek.
But it's not so much an ethnic or racial attitude, because they're not banned from the Roman Empire. The Romans are actually surprisingly inclusive in the ancient world. So as a barbarian, you can become a Roman citizen.
And if you're a barbarian farmer, could you bring your flocks through here?
That's what we don't know. What we really need is some evidence showing that. But this wall makes it very hard to move your flock of sheep back and forth if you need to.
And speaking of...
Yeah, of course. I have an entire video dedicated to how there is this change in sort of the ability to move between being a barbarian. Sometimes the Romans consider it being half beast, by the way. I mean, the Romans were, it depends. Not everyone thought that way, but I'm saying sometimes it's mentioned. But this is probably the main difference between the perspective of a Roman, where they say, well, we are civilized, and the Greeks, I don't know why I didn't mention that, everyone else is an outsider, everyone else is below us. That's how the Romans think. This is why I often like to state the Romans weren't racists, they hated everyone equally. With that being said, I think the difference the professor is trying to convey is the fact that there was the ability to change. So you are a barbarian, and according to some Romans, you're a half beast, but if you are civilized and you accept Roman culture, learn Latin, be a productive member of Roman society, pay your taxes, maybe serve as an auxiliary, whatever it is, then you may one day become a citizen. And once you become a citizen, then you're not a barbarian anymore. So that can change. Of course, from a modern racist perspective, you can't change that. That's immutable. It's not movable. Given, it's also important to take into consideration that as we read the annals and as we read the testimonies, you could also lose it. You could become a Roman citizen, but then if you rebel, you're back to beast status from the perspective of the Romans. You're like an animal. You can gain it, you can change it. Which is why I'm not sure I would use the term inclusive when it comes to this, because it becomes a bit too positive in a context where, well, yeah, if you pay your taxes and don't cause trouble and you accept our superior culture, then yeah, you're included among us. Comparatively to other people of the period, yeah, they were very open-minded. With that being said, if you don't do as we say, you're a beast, and you will be dealt with if you dare to rebel. Not sure that's exactly inclusive in the modern sense of the term. Just keeping it real.
Well, what's this extra bit of wall here? Is this a later addition? Why have they walled up some of this gateway to the north?
Yeah, so this big, fantastic gateway gets narrowed to a simple postern. You know, just one person portal.
Just here, yeah.
And that becomes a control point, really.
Yeah.
Is that because they're scared about sort of giant forces crashing through here?
It could be.
This is such a strange way to put it, because they were scared. They were being professionals. That's what the military does. Do you think the American Marine Corps is going to not care about defensive capabilities of a fort and making sure that you're well organized and tactically optimized in all situations? Do you think they do that because they're scared? Like, I mean, it's a weird way to put it, Mr. Snow. They're being professional. That's all they're doing.
But if you also consider that by blocking this gate, making it so just a single person can come through, you're really reducing the usefulness of this gate. That forces anyone with wagons of goods, large herds of cattle, flocks of sheep,
they have to
go to those forts and go through the gates at the forts, where there's lots of soldiers.
How did people come and go? Is there a system of passes or passports, paperwork?
We know from other frontiers, Egypt especially, where they have straka, bits of pottery with messages painted on them, that this would act as a pass. So there is a paperwork, a pass that an officer would sign that would allow you access in and out of the Roman Empire.
Fascinating.
Just like modern borders.
Yeah.
There could have been quite the administration up here.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And also potentially, a bit of corruption as well. Because actually, there's no major general that's sitting here. So this might be a lucrative position for a very lowly soldier if they want to make a little bit of extra cash.
Absolutely. Corruption has always been a main problem. And in fact, it is one of the main reasons as to why the ancient Roman Empire collapsed. As I mentioned on my dedicated videos, corruption is one of the main problems, and it will only get worse as you go later and later into imperial dominate.
Life for those soldiers manning the lonely mile castles must have sometimes felt quite remote from the protection of the larger garrisons. This reconstruction of Mile Castle 48 shows how tightly packed and hunkered down these little forts were.
Yeah.
So even though this is a solid feeling structure, it's still quite small. And I can imagine on certain nights here or mist days it feel quite isolated. But are there accounts of people from the north coming and attacking the garrisons here, slaughtering them, raids, full invasions?
We don't have many historical accounts of battle. We have a nice account from Cassius Dio when the Caledones crossed the wall. And so we know there's the odd invasion, but this could be something which is a daily occurrence, a small skirmish as a Roman patrol party and raiders meet, or it might be something that's very rare. And of course that can change over time.
Yeah, I would say seldom. I don't think it would be daily unless you're like really in a moment of a full-on invasion. I wouldn't say daily would be the norm. Seldomly happens, but probably a lot of the time nothing was really happening.
Remember the East Gate at Bird Oswald?
In fact, it could be the exceptionality of such events that have them recorded for us historically. If this was something that happened every single day, they wouldn't even bother recording it as, oh wow, this happened today.
This is how it would have looked in its prime.
Yeah, good.
I've headed east to the remarkable reconstruction of a gateway on the wall, built by the mouth of the River Tyne at South Shields. This is a huge Roman base at Arbea. It gives a clear image of just how imposing Rome's frontier was.
Yeah.
But I've come here to see something rather less monumental. Tucked away in Arbea's museum are two remarkable tombstones that reveal deeply personal stories about the people who travelled from across the empire to live and work around Hadrian's Wall. To help me decode the details is curator Alex Kroom.
Okay, well, this is it's really interesting, but it's also very long. So I'm going to divide it into episodes because so far it's a well-made documentary. I always have something to say, but it's a well-made documentary. So the first section, I would say, kind of finishes here. I wish they put chapters, but it kind of finishes here because now we're moving into this new expert. And then we will do a second episode. Oh my gosh, then there is the guy. And then probably the second episode is going to talk about, we're going to review this and see what he's going to say. Yeah, that definitely needs its own episode. And then we go back to the previous professor. Definitely we can make a few episodes of this. All right, so thank you so much, and do if you want the full context, go watch it. Go watch the whole thing first. So we give them the watch since they are the ones that produce the episode. You'll find a link in the description and in a pinned comment. But also when I do produce my second episode and possibly the third, we'll see, then you kind of know already, you kind of come from a position where you already know what they said. Maybe you already had your own counter arguments, and then we'll see if they match mine. All right, thank you so much for watching, and as always, thanks History Hit for making the video, even though I'm not a huge fan of all of your choices, Simon Elliott. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Bye.